Hi, and welcome back to the Crew Table. Tonight, our special guest is a personal friend of mine who's kind of done a little bit of it all. We're going to discuss Amber's journey through pre hospital EMS, flight medicine, and finally her transition into an organ donation role, which is what she does today. Amber, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Amber. I've been critical care paramedic for 10 years now. Went to EMT school in 2015. Promptly started paramedic school in the fall of 2015. Completed it in 2016. Started a ground service. I went to critical care school in 2020 in the middle of COVID.
Oh,
Worked critical care on the ground for a couple of years before I started flying in 2022. Did that for about 2 years. Went back to a private service, did upper management for a while, and then got into the organ donation sector.
that's what you do now? Just
Mhm.
organ donation?
I worked with what they call an OPO, which is an organ procurement organization. We work on the donor side instead of the recipient side. So we work with potential and actual donors.
Really?
Mhm.
Do you like that more than being on the street?
Most days, especially when it's raining.
Yeah.
It's a different side of things, and it was difficult to get used to, not in my role having direct patient care. Going from treating patients all day long and making sure patients survive, and then moving over to the point of we come in when families are ready to make end of life decisions and there's nothing else that can be done. So somebody has either become brain dead or they're ready to withdraw on someone who's just not going to have quality of life. And so there's no more like heroic measures. You're
Yeah.
coming in when someone's died.
So you went from being a flight paramedic to organ donation,
Yes,
which I feel
different
like
side of the
are
coin.
2 completely
Yes,
different jobs. That's
it
crazy.
is.
How old were you when you went to EMT school?
I was 19 years old.
How was that?
A culture shock.
Yeah.
Coming from a very small town and being relatively sheltered, it was a big change. Mhm.
Tell me some of the feelings or emotions you had. I mean, you just come out of high school and then now you're in EMT school. I feel like that's somewhat typical now. Like when I see like the local EMT programs and stuff that I'm affiliated with, like there are people that are sometimes even 17 years old. And to me, that's crazy. But
Yeah, working volunteer service and stuff.
yeah,
Um, I had actually, recently broken my back, so I was stuck at home,
interesting.
got into binging Grey's Anatomy,
Yeah.
realized I couldn't afford medical school, but the ambulances looked really cool, so I thought, "Let's go to EMT school."
Yeah. Fuck it. Whatever.
Yeah.
So, you didn't wanna be a medic or anything, like, when you were in, like, high school or earlier?
No, I
No?
had considered I think all girls kinda go through the, "I'm gonna go to nursing school, and I'm gonna work in the NICU or labor delivery," my friends and I had talked about that, but I had never thought much about an ambulance
Yeah.
or what it entailed, the licensure, who it was, what all went into it. It was literally just a whim.
Talk about, like, the change in, like, mental health or your perspective on the world from being that high schooler to now you're, like, in EMT school and pursuing medic school.
Once you get into the field and really start experiencing things, there's what I consider a great deal of innocence, and your view on the world that kinda goes away. You see people at their worst or how awful other humans are to humans, and it really takes away the ideology of being a kid and what the world looks like
Yeah.
and, thinking being an adult, this is really great, and it really just wrecks that.
Yeah.
You realize people actually kinda suck.
Do you have a critical, like, first memory, like, just now getting on the ambulance, or I guess, or anything that you look back on that was like, "Oh my god," like, that was a
In
culture shock?
my 2nd semester of paramedic school, I worked the cardiac arrest of my own grandpa,
Oh my god.
and that was the biggest shock for me. My EMT instructor used to say, "You'll have a make you or break you moment. You don't know what it's gonna be, and you don't know when it's gonna be." And that was mine. I realized that if I could get through that, that I could handle pretty much anything else that was thrown at me in the career.
How did you feel that moment?
It was a lot. It was Mother's Day. We were visiting family. Um, my grandpa and grandmother and my niece, who was 4 at the time, were in another room. and I was at the room across from it, and I could hear my niece giggling, they were playing, um, my cousins were cooking Mother's Day breakfast, we were all getting ready to get up, and then all of a sudden, I just hear this really loud, like, thump into the bedroom door, and then all I hear is my grandmother just screaming bloody murder for me, and we couldn't get in the room because he was, 260 pounds, a big man,
Against the door.
laying directly in the door. We had to rip the door off the frame
Fuck.
to get in there, and then I had 911 on the phone, and he's just laying supine on his back, guppy breathing, and starting to turn blue, and then I was just calling 911. I was like, "I need an ambulance. Can you send a helicopter while you're at it?" Like, and I just felt for a pulse, and I was like, "I have to go." Like, he's coded, and had to start doing CPR on him. The fire department got there. I'm the one that hooked him up to the AED. I'm the one that shocked him. It was a lot. EMS finally got there. I had gotten him back by the 3rd shock, and they intubated him, started lines, pushing meds. I rode in the ambulance with him. We met the helicopter midway, and then we went to the hospital. He ended up having a quadruple bypass after that.
God bless.
Pretty heavy recovery and only lived for about another 9 months after that.
Did he wake up with, like, neuro intact and
He did. He woke up he was waking up when we were pushing him into the ambulance. He actually
really?
extubated himself.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I had something similar happen to me, and I remember I don't remember the moment. I had to actually go back and watch my security cameras in my house because I, like, blacked out, and I
Yeah.
was watching myself do all the things, and I remember the paramedics came in, and I was starting IV on my grandpa in my scrubs, and they were like, "What is going
Yeah.
on?"
I remember the fireman looking at me when I was hooking him up to the AED, and he's like, "Who is this to you?" I was like, "It's my grandfather." He was like, "What?" He's like, "Do you" I was like, "I need to be doing something.
Yeah,
I don't wanna sit back. Let me help."
yeah,
Because that was the only way I could continue to function in that moment.
yeah. In your practice with other patients, did you ever kinda relive that experience, or do you ever, like, kinda, like, see him in any moments whenever you're, like, treating patients in the after that moment?
There's been plenty. There's been, the patients that resemble him
Yeah,
or look like him, or, about a year after that, I worked, a cardiac arrest on Mother's Day for this elderly couple that had been together for 60 years.
God
He
bless.
had let his wife sleep in that morning and finally realized, "Wow, she's been in the bed a while," and went to wake her up, and she
Didn't
wouldn't
wake
wake
up.
up. And that was very much just immediately pulled me back to that because it was such a similar situation.
I definitely got a couple of those where you're, like, doing something you get the moment, and I feel like it comes out most whenever you're at the sending facility or you're picking up from, like, a med crew or, like, a ground crew or something that they're maybe being negligent or not treating the patient appropriately, and I see these people from my past, like, in that same position, and I oftentimes get, like, very angry.
Yeah,
I'm like, "This is not okay." Like, I
it's not.
remember how this went the last time. This is not good.
Yeah. I've always kept the mindset of I want to treat people how I wanted my grandfather treated in that
Yeah.
moment
Yeah.
and how he was taken care of.
Yeah. I feel like people that can't tap into those moments, like, the struggle to really, like, maintain their empathy and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and you can definitely see it in their care.
They lose it just completely. You can tell they're extremely burnt out and just
Yeah.
completely checked out from the compassion.
Yeah, it's terrible. So, how old were you when you went to medic school?
I had just turned 20,
Young.
extremely young.
What year was that?
That was 2015.
Okay.
I started EMT school at 19. I turned 20 at the end of that semester, and then immediately interviewed for paramedic school because I fell in love. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't, this is amazing.
Yeah. Just, like, rolled right into it.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest things, like, especially with my EMT program and, like, even the medic school that I teach and the EMT school that I used to teach at, I would tell these students, like, "You got to keep going through it, like, you can't stop." And you see these people that take a break at, EMTB or MTA, and then you look back and it's like you've been a EMT for 10 years.
There's such a discourse in the EMS community about not working as an EMT for X amount of years and getting experience before going to paramedic school. You're either on the "that's a terrible idea" or "it doesn't really matter," because when
Yeah,
you look at nursing, nobody makes you become a CNA and then an LPN and then an RN. You can just go straight
straight
to
through it.
RN with
Yeah,
0 experience, and there's just so many people that think you have to be an EMT for X
yeah,
amount of years and get experience. I don't feel like that hindered me.
yeah,
I do feel like I turned out to be a really good paramedic,
yeah.
regardless of not working as an EMT for 5 years before that.
there is the same argument that I heard as a graduate nurse or whatever, that everybody's like, "Hey, if you wanna work in the ER ICU, you have to go work med surg, and you won't be respected, you won't have
Right.
time management skill," and I think that's, like, the worst argument in the world.
It really is. I don't feel
It's
like
pointless.
med-surg helps in
Any
either one of those departments.
No, negative, no, there's not a day that I've been on this planet that I wish I worked med surg.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wishes they would've worked med-surg.
I agree. Do you think that people should be able like, there should be straight up paramedics, like, schools and programs or critical care medic schools and programs that you should be able to go off the street, sit in for a year or 2, and learn how to actually become, like, a paramedic and come out immediately? Or do you think that going through, like, at least EMT school, EMTA school is beneficial?
I think they would have to restructure the
100%.
paramedic
Yeah.
programs for that because there is 100% merit to the fact that BLS comes before ALS. You
Mhm.
need to have good BLS skills before you jump into your ALS skills. They
Yeah.
are the basis of everything you do. So, it would definitely need to be my program was a year or 3 semesters. I went to a very small school, so we didn't have a lot of the resources that a lot of other paramedic schools did. A lot of people, get to go to the OR and practice their live intubations. We didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
My first intubation outside of cadavers was on my own in the streets,
Yeah. Yeah.
thrown to the wolves like
Yeah.
most everybody in EMS.
Do you feel that your paramedic school, that being said, like, prepared you for the job to go out on your own? So, like, day 1 off of your FTO, were you prepared? Did your school prepare you for that moment?
I think with the resources that that program and that instructor were given, they did the best they could. Like I said,
Yeah.
it was a very small school. We didn't have, like, a lot of the other ones where, like, they even have, like, ambulances to mock calls and things like that. We didn't have
Yeah.
anything. We had very limited, um, dummies and, the monitor was a very old life pack, like, it still had the paddles, which is cool in theory.
Yeah.
But I think for what we were given, yes, but I also think that there's only so much you can learn from a book because everything in that book is textbook, how
Yeah.
things should be, and then you get out in the street and you start looking at rhythms, and they don't look like anything like that textbooks was.
No.
So, I think the best was done that could be done for that
Yeah.
school.
Were you more fearful whenever you got out on your own as a medic or you were put on a truck as a EMT?
I got really, really lucky. I had really good preceptors in paramedic school. I had really good FTOs when I first started, that were very seasoned medics that had been doing it 20 something years. And I will always be grateful that I got even luckier when I got let go as a 21-year-old paramedic that my EMTs had been doing it for 15 and 20 years. I had 2 partners straight out the gate, and I will forever be grateful for them because they really molded me and guided me and had such a big hand in making me the paramedic that I am today. They were people that I could lean on and be like, "Hey, I haven't seen this before. What do you think? What do you think's the best call? How should we approach this?" So I got really lucky in that aspect.
And there's something to be said, like, there's somebody that I work with now that's been at EMTB for, a while, and now she's going to paramedic school, and she's been partnered with the same partner for, like, over 10 years, who's a great medic, and this person has seen more atrocities than I have in my entire life, like, probably just in a couple years as a EMT, like, they work in a busy area, they're very trauma heavy.
Yeah.
She knows more about pre-hospital medicine than I do as, like, a flight nurse paramedic, and she's going through, paramedic school, and we're talking about it, and she's like, "I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready for this, like, I'm scared, whatever," and I'm like, "You have been
Yeah.
preparing for this moment."
You're good.
Yes, since I was, like, in middle school, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? You get so much experience, like, even, like, I think it is nice to go all the way through to medic school or whatever as quick as you can, but those people, the seasoned EMTs that have been there for, like, 10, 15 years, like, I at a certain point, I think that they can almost perform as a paramedic, and especially their BLS skills are locked in, like, it's pretty
Yeah.
incredible.
Absolutely.
But I went to nursing school and then to a traditional, like, semester-long EMTB program, and I remember I had this epiphany moment probably, like, a month in where I was like, "I feel like I just learned more in this 1 month of EMTB school than I probably learned in a year of nursing school," and it was using a BVM, airway adjuncts, like, extrication, the splinting, all these things that we never touched in nursing school, and I was like, I feel like you can be a really, really good EMTB can be more impactful than like a emergency room nurse whenever you're not in the hospital
I
when it
think
comes to saving a life.
it would be more beneficial, especially for nurses that wanna go to the ER. We have to do clinical rotations in the ER, and I feel like it would be beneficial for nursing students to have to come in and at least do a couple of rides on an ambulance.
100%. Because even now on, like, the flight side, like, I'll roll into an ER and just get absolutely brutalized by the receiving nurses or doctors and people that have never been on it. I'm like, they're asking these questions, and you're like, I if you saw the scene, like, you would probably
Right.
not have a single question for me. You would just take the patient, not say anything.
Yeah.
Like, we come off a scene with, 20 people that are screaming and yelling, and you're trying to pick which shot guy you wanna bring to the trauma center, and you don't care if they have allergies or you don't care what their history is, like, you've got to go.
Yeah. Like, the
You'll
immediate
figure it
life
out.
threats
Yeah.
are my focus. Like, I'm the doctor, I'm the nurse, I'm
Yes.
pharmacy, I'm the
All of
RT,
it.
registration, the
Yes.
scribe, like, I'm all those things in one, and it's me
Yes.
and, if I'm lucky, a couple firemen, or if I can get a
Yes.
fireman to drive, I've got my partner in the back.
Yes.
That's best case scenario.
100%. I just had a really terrible call, like, last week, and somebody, when I came back, asked, "Hey, who was the ground crew? Like, what were their names? What did they look like?" And I realized at that moment, like, I never picked my eyes up above the patient's eye level, which was on the stretcher in the ambulance. I never saw their faces because, to me, if I don't think my patient's gonna survive the next 10 seconds, like, I'm not gonna look up. Like, I'm looking at the
Right.
patient, the monitor, the interventions, like, all these things. I never had like, a second to look up around me and be like, "Oh."
You automatically just zone in
Yeah.
on what needs to be fixed, and right now
Yes.
it's not making friends.
Yes, and we never made it past that, like, 10-second point, you know what I
Right.
mean? So, when we get to the hospital, it's like, "Guys, if you had this experience, like, if you had been here before, if you've seen the way that these scenes go, like, you would be a lot nicer and more appreciative of what we have done." Like, it's pretty incredible what we could accomplish in 10, 15, 20 minutes versus, you'll pick up a patient per IFT that's been there 24 hours, and they haven't even been given a fluid bolus yet. Like,
Yeah.
I had another, like, epiphany moment during COVID where we had, like, an arrest coming in, and I didn't have a trauma room to put him in. I'm panicked, right? Because 'Cause I'm like, they can only go in these 3 rooms at this hospital, and all the other rooms are full, and I don't know what we're gonna do, and I had my charge nurse used to be EMT, and she pulled me aside, and she was like, "We can do ACLS on the ground, on
Yeah.
the tile floor.
Like, it does not
It
matter.
does not matter where or when." Like, people are doing this in people's houses and in the back of a truck or in the back of, Billy Bob's truck on the highway, like, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
In the middle of the woods, in a
Yes.
ditch, in a
Yes.
broken car, you just make it work with what you have.
And I think that's when I realized, like, I probably should go to, like, at least CMT school at that point, and I'm glad I did. Even if I never flew, I think that that would be ridiculously beneficial.
Absolutely. I think it also gives us a better appreciation for each other,
Oh, 100%.
is learning what each one does.
After medic school, you said you went to your critical care program, like your CCPC or something like that,
Mhm.
and during COVID.
Yes.
So, how was that experience?
It was a good experience, but I also feel like we got shortchanged a little bit
Yeah,
because of social distancing and stuff. It was not an in-person program. We had to do it online.
yeah,
And I was really disappointed with our clinicals, especially with the higher level program that I went to. When we did clinicals at such a high level one hospital, we had to stand there and watch. We weren't getting to interact. We weren't getting to do any sort of skills that we would need to practice. Like, it was really frustrating to sit in the corner when they bring in a gunshot victim, they crack his chest, and they're doing a cardiac massage, and you're just sitting in the corner like,
like, kinda
"Wow,
peek over
I
somebody's
wanna do
shoulder.
that. Can I
Yeah,
help?" But overall, it was a good program. We had good instructors. We got to learn from a lot of surgeons and ER physicians and nurse practitioners and PAs, so it was a good program. They did the best they could with what we were handed during
yeah.
that time, like everybody was.
To me, it's always interesting because, like, say we look back at, like, wartime or something like that in our, country's history. This to me is the equivalent of, like, we're preparing for World War II, so we're gonna cut boot camp in half.
Yeah,
And it's like, in what world does that make sense? Like, why did the nursing schools get shut down? Why did they get limited? Why did the medic schools get limited? Like, whenever they should have been training 10 times harder because you rolled out of that, like, online experience into arguably some of the hardest, most difficult patient care that has ever been done, like, in modern history.
and I felt awful for a lot of them were kids like I was, like,
Yeah.
being thrown into the worst situations imaginable.
And I think that I mean, it's kinda I won't say it's sad, it is good that, like, the newer generation didn't have to experience it, but the more I interact with, like, people in the community, especially in emergency medicine with a high turnover rate and everything, there are a large majority of people in some departments and areas that weren't even serving during COVID, and they don't know what that was like. For everybody else that did it, like, obviously, like, we resonate with, like, with each other on how that feels, but you come out
Trauma bonding.
blind, yeah, into that environment, and you're young, you don't I mean, your hands are tied, you haven't been trained appropriately, and then here you go.
Yeah, I remember when I first got hired, you have to do, like, the N95 fitting and things like
Yeah.
that, and it's like, "This is dumb. I'm never gonna have to wear this stuff." Like,
Yes.
this is, like, apocalyptic type
Yes.
things, and then that was our life for several years.
Did you feel prepared for flight?
I did, like we were talking about, I think coming from a pre-hospital standpoint
Yeah.
was definitely an advantage, but also medics do a lot of interfacility as well. So we've seen both sides of the coin where I don't feel like flight nurses really get that advantage
Mm,
of pre-hospital. I feel like they just kind of get thrown into that and you really have to lean on your paramedic partner for that. But I also
100%.
think it's really great to have an ICU nurse beside you for a lot of the stuff that we
Yeah.
don't deal with all the time. Antibiotics, certain drips, TPN, things like that. It wasn't a lot that I had to deal
Yeah.
with on my side. So it's really a partnership, and I think having a medic and a nurse really balances you out.
With the emergence of online EMT schools, RN to EMT, all this stuff where you can, like, get on and do your modules online and get a Word EMTB license, like, it kinda scares me because I went to a traditional EMTB program, rode the ambulance, went to medic school, rode the ambulance for a little bit longer before I got my flight job, and I was nowhere near prepared for, like, the scene aspect of it. It probably took me a year and a half, 2 years before I say that I would feel comfortable, like, just walking around on a scene and knowing who's who and what's going on, but you've got a lot more nurses stepping into the flight profession that have literally been, awarded a EMTB license via a computer and have like, I did a workover not too long ago, probably a year ago, worked at a different base out of town, knew I was working with a new person. I realized that she, like, never really been in an ambulance before. I noticed that whenever she's, like, standing outside of the ambulance, just, like, standing there,
Yeah.
like,
Like,
"What
I
do I
don't
do
know
with
what
my
to do.
hands?" Yeah, and I was like, "What's going on?" She's like, "I don't what do I do? I've never been in an ambulance." It's like, "Okay, that is probably an issue."
I am not a fan of online programs where you're not getting extensive hands-on training. Um, I can see where it's a little different with someone like a nurse who's got at least general medical experience
Yeah,
to maybe do an online program, but I still feel like there should be X amount of calls you have to take, clinicals you have to do. Like, there
100%.
should still be some basis there. So you're not a deer in the headlights because scenes can be extremely overwhelming.
And dangerous, and
Yeah.
you got, especially in rural areas, people with very limited training that, kinda follow the good old boy system, but that's all they got, and they're gonna cut that person out of that car, and they're probably not they don't do this that often, they're not looking behind them or around them,
Yeah.
like,
Like, I
I've
don't need to worry about my patient and you walking into traffic.
Yes, 100%. Like, I've literally been on a scene where volunteer firemen come up with their trucks and wrap chains around the car to start pulling it to pieces, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
doing the best with what they were given at their
yeah,
volunteer fire department.
yeah. Like you said, I don't need my partner, like, about to get chain slapped,
Yeah.
like, in front of me. I don't need another patient.
No.
You start flying in another rural area, and, again, you're back in, like, a resource-stricken environment. How did that feel now being the savior, like, the only help that's coming?
I'd be lying if I didn't say it gives you a bit of a god complex,
Yeah,
but my whole entire career, I worked rural medicine in areas where you're doing really good and you're really, really grateful for people who first respond in their personal vehicles. They have radios at home, and you're really, really grateful when those people show up. They're EMRs in most
yeah,
places, when you don't have necessarily a full fire department that can show up. So I've got used to really relying on myself and my partner and the wonderful people who do it for free and
yes,
they show up and help you. Um, so I would say I do really good at thriving in those environments. I've always really enjoyed being able to see the medicine that I practice work, where you're not 5-10 minutes from the hospital where it's a 30-minute drive out. You're looking at another 30 minutes back with really sick patients. Um, it's different when you're flying doing inter facilities rescuing patients from other hospitals. I think a lot of people assume you went to medical school and therefore you know what you're doing. Um, Not always the case in these really rural areas. Again, they don't see a lot of this stuff a lot. They don't see the critically ill patients. They're not having to intubate every day. They're, not used to severe traumas. We've flown out to places where shootings are left and right, but that hospital didn't even have blood products.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what that patient needed in that moment.
Yeah.
It can get frustrating. Um, you show up and everybody's praising and super happy you're there, or you get the other people that are just like, "Get this patient out of here. I don't want you doing anything now, just get
Yeah.
out. Just
Get out.
I don't need you to do anything, just fly away." It's like, "Hang on a second, I've gotta fix a lot of stuff that you've done." Or like, "This patient needed to be intubated an hour ago." So, that's also unfortunate for those patients, but that's where it becomes, I hate to use the word fun or exciting for us, but we're happy we really get to practice our skills and help those people and get them better even on the way to a higher level of care.
Sometimes the tools or, things that we have to offer are no different than even what they have, at the scene or at the hospital, whatever. But what we do bring, especially with the company that we both work for, was structure, stress inoculation in our training, like being able to come in and be like, "Hey, stop.
Yeah,
This is
let's
what we
all
need to
take a step
do.
back.
Let's take a
Yeah,
breather. We're gonna make sure that we, do these couple things in this list, and then we're gonna go."
yeah,
And just having that level of, like, calmness and security, even though inside you're, like, screaming internally
yeah.
or
It's like,
freaking out
"Why did
or
we do any of this?" Like, what
yes,
were y'all thinking?
yes. Just that calm nature is, like, just very healing for
Yeah,
the
it'll
people
get you a lot
providing
further.
care. Yes. I remember I had a worker come work with me recently, and we worked, like, a decent trauma, and in the helicopter, he said, "I have never seen somebody be so calm during a trauma encounter before."
Panic causes mistakes. It
100%.
doesn't help. It's also not your emergency.
No, I thought he was talking about the patient. I was like, "Yeah, he took it great, like, he was just laid on the stretcher, like, all injured, like,
Yeah,
he
he's
did
real
great."
chill.
Yeah, and he was like, "No, I was talking about you." And I was like, "Me? I'm panicking." Like, my heart rate's probably 150,
Yeah,
but on the outside, you don't realize that you appear
calm.
calm.
I've had partners tell me that before. They're like, you're really calm. You handle this
Yeah.
so well." I was like, "You should have been there the first time somebody died in front of me."
Yes. Yes, exactly, like, completely different story.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
learned behavior for sure.
100%. But I think it's just funny that you don't realize, like, the aura that you give off on a scene
Really
sometimes.
matters.
Oh, yeah. And then you could be literally losing control of yourself internally, but on the outside, you're like,
Yeah, gotta hold it together for somebody.
"Yeah, it looks good on camera." Um, hmm. So moving into your new role, pause. How do you feel about the paramedic nurse pay disparity in flight?
This is, a soapbox of mine.
Let's hear it.
And when we would talk about it at the base, I always thought it was really funny, especially when the pilots would chime in. It's like, "Well, nurses have to have BSRN and blah, blah, blah." I was like, "What do you think those couple extra classes gave them when
Yeah.
it comes to this job?"
Healthcare management.
Yes, we are doing the exact same job. Both of us bring different experience, but there should be no pay disparities unless you are flying with a higher level provider, NP, PA, MDs fly sometimes. So when it just comes to you being there between you and a nurse, there shouldn't be a pay difference
No.
unless it comes to years of experience. Yes, you
Yeah.
should be paid for that. But why was I making over $10 less an hour when new nurses would come in and I'm having to teach them about the vent, how to intubate, what to do on scene? Like, there's a lot of areas they didn't have experience in, and I'm having to train them up while a ridiculous pay gap is sitting there. So,
Man,
yeah.
I agree. I think it's humbling, even today, like, I would consider myself to be, like, decently proficient at my job. There are times where I have to tap out and look at my partner and be like, "Dude, it is all you. All the pressure of this call are on your shoulders. I need you to get this tube. I need you to do whatever from the left seat. Like, I need you to use your skills and abilities as a paramedic that are better than mine, and you're getting paid significantly less than me.
Yeah. And there's, like, plenty of times where I feel like pretty much all of the nurses that I've flown with have no pediatric experience unless they
Yeah,
worked in an ER, and then it's still
yeah,
pretty limited because I've never walked in an ER that wasn't pediatric, that wasn't ready to throw those kids out the door to me to take them to the next pediatric facility.
1,000%.
So, most everybody's experience is in adults. So, I unfortunately am the pediatric magnet. So,
Yes.
my partner would lean on me a lot when it came to peds because I had a
Yeah,
lot more experience in that area and I was more comfortable with it. So, no, when it comes to being partners and flying, there should not be a pay gap the way it is. But people have learned, especially as they start letting us take over different roles in like hospitals or doing anesthesia for dentists or things like that, is you can pay us less for even more work. So they have realized that they can put us in as like our trauma center here. They'll hire paramedics and we come in, we'll do the full role of a nurse, especially with my critical care. I could give meds and work the vent and do things the nurses couldn't, still making less money than they were.
yeah.
And they will continue to do that until we throw a big enough fit about it.
I don't I hope it'll change. I'm
I
not optimistic though.
I'm not either. And I think a lot of it is arguably sometimes we don't help ourselves. And we're not that old of a profession.
No, not at all. That's pretty
So,
crazy when you think about that part of it.
yeah, but people are really learning, um, what we do and what we can do because I've walked into hospitals where the doctor looked me dead in the face and asked if we had oxygen on the unit, asked me if I had narcotics. I mean, just all kinds of stuff, and I'm just like, "How do you not know at least a bare minimum of what my abilities are?" Like, I just RSI'd this patient, bilaterally decompressed, and brought them to you, and now it's, "Hey, do you have fentanyl in your truck?"
Yeah. Do you know what
"Okay."
that is?
"Yeah."
I always think it's funny the level of respect I get, especially when I was riding like the ambulance and flying at the same time. I would fly into hospital A on Monday and get certain levels of attention or care or, the
Respect.
respect. And then on Tuesday, I drive into hospital A, same department, same crew on the ambulance.
And you get absolutely
And
shit on.
yes. And I remember the hospital that I worked at for a long time. I come into the ER. This was a dialysis to home call, and the patient had obviously like a massive LVO at some point in their dialysis treatment and was in like AFib RVR, didn't have a pressure, unresponsive, blown out on one side. And I had a fresh EMTB partner, and I literally told her, I was like, I need you to get on the radio and tell this hospital that we're coming and it's really bad and give them the vitals and just go there as fast as you can. And I'm like hammering on the guy in the back, and we roll in, and I don't know if it was the radio report or the company I worked with or what triggered them to not prepare at all for this patient to come. And when they saw my face, I'll never forget the horror on their eyes when they were like, "Oh no,
Yeah, we messed
get a
up.
trauma room right now." And the patient was like peri arrest at this
Yeah,
point. And I mean, what is that? You know what I mean? And I was just there the night before on the helicopter
yeah,
where they're like rolling out the red carpet and like, come in here.
absolutely.
And you can bring a BLS transfer to the ER or a BLS scene to the ER, and a lot of times they're gonna have a trauma room ready for you, and depending on what hospital you get to. But
Yep.
um, you do
It's infuriating.
psychotic. Is what I mean.
It was such a big difference going from the ground and being treated bad by the doctors and the nurses, and then coming in a flight suit, and it's a completely different attitude.
Yes,
Like, I was the same medic then as I am now. Same capabilities, everything.
arguably worse because I haven't slept. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Yeah.
This is flight, 6 in a 24-hour
Yes.
period.
Literally. So what made you depart from your flight role into the like organization world?
I didn't have much of a choice because of health issues. It became too physically demanding, on a lot of the issues that I have, especially with the heat, lifting patients the way I was, especially when I, um, went from one partner to another partner who's a really, really good partner. She was just small. so our weight automatically went up, and
Yeah.
so
You get punished for it.
putting 400-pound,
Yeah.
grown men, majority of the weight on me to get them in the helicopter was too much. So I had to, find a less strenuous job to take on.
And that's something that I did, like, a lot of prep before I flew and everything. I thought I kinda had a good idea of what I was getting into when I started it, but they might mention, stress from flight, physiology, and all this other stuff, but to me, like, I didn't really what I didn't notice was, like, how hard this job is on your body. Like, I could look at pictures from when I was in high school, and then a year and a half later, nursing school, I see a little bit of age, and then nursing through COVID, I can see a little bit, and I look at my last year in the hospital and, like, year 2 of being a flight nurse, and I'm like, "Oh my god, what happened?" Like,
Yeah,
you just don't realize how hard it is on your body, like you said, the heat, the stress, being up all the time, like, you get hit on the ambulance, like, depending on where you work, you might be back in bed 45 minutes later, but you might be gone for 4 or 5 hours on one call, and then you gotta come back and clean, chart for, 4 times longer than I did on the ground,
yeah.
like
It's a lot. They always preach, lifting techniques and having someone lift with you and pull this way, push that way. That does not exist on the ambulance.
no.
It doesn't. When you are in the worst predicaments possible, whether it's outside on the side of the road or in somebody's house in a 2 by 2 bathroom where they're crunched up into the toilet
Yes.
and they're 3 times your size,
Yes.
it's incredibly difficult. There's no proper lifting there. It has destroyed my back
Yes.
over the last decade.
And the helicopter, I mean, it's not built for what we do, in my opinion, or but I mean, some of them are, but
Not a Bell 206, no.
no, no, it's not.
When the patient is literally in my
Yes.
lap.
You're
Yeah.
sitting straight up on, like I always equate it to sitting in the back of a cop car. Like, right now, my back hurts,
Yeah.
and I mean, I did one flight yesterday, and I'm like, I just sat wrong for
Yeah.
an hour, and I'm like, "God, man, I'm 26 years old, and it's hard to get out of
I feel
bed."
like I'm 80.
Yeah, I gotta, like, lay on my stomach when I go to sleep. It's terrible. Um, so you exit your flight role, you start at the organ donation center, and you worked on the ambulance as for management a little bit in between there. Talk to me about this new world of organ donation because I know that especially on the ground, like you don't really get to see the whole process, but in the ER, it's something that I begrudgingly had to do all the time because to us, it's just we don't really get a whole lot of education on it. It's really just like here's this packet. Whenever this person dies, fill it out, call these people, do these things. We never get this like explanation of like what's actually going on behind the scenes.
I don't think you'll ever get a full understanding unless you're doing the job. I
Really?
had no idea the amount of effort and work and behind the scenes stuff that happened in organ donation until I got in that role. I think everybody has a really big misconception about what we do, how we do it, and a lot of people treat us really poorly because they don't really understand it and see what we do. We get called vultures quite often.
Yeah.
I walked in one day and somebody goes, "Hey, there's the Grim Reaper." Like, I don't want this patient to die.
No.
Like, I'm here because they're out of choices.
Yes. It's
So
interesting.
it's definitely been very different than what I'm used to. It is rewarding in a different way because it's really difficult
Yeah.
to watch families have to make these really just crappy decisions and be put in these terrible spots to have to withdraw care on their family or they're brain dead. And, there's nothing else that can be done. And so they're having to make that really difficult decision. And that's heartbreaking. But to see the other side of things and the gift that it gives other people and the life that it gives other people is the really rewarding side of it because this situation really sucks right now. But we know that, okay, now this heart's on the way to a 16-year-old in this state and they're going to get to live a full life now. Or somebody's been on dialysis for the last 10 years and they're finally
Yes.
getting a kidney and they get their life back because you don't have a full life on dialysis. You're 3 days a
No.
week. Those are incredibly sick people. Your filtration system is gone. You're depending on a machine, and so it's super rewarding.
I always thought that being a hospice nurse would be, like, very difficult, and, like, that was probably other than being a burn nurse, like, as hard as it gets, in my
Yeah,
opinion, but I feel like even as a hospice nurse, you have a solution and an answer, and that is, like, death, and you can easily facilitate it with, like, pain
making
meds
people
and
comfortable and
anxiolytics, and, like,
yeah,
you are, like, the one that has the answers and the advice and like the healing hands, but your job is that kind of plus, "Hey, I know you're struggling, but I need something big from you, and I
Yeah,
need you to have an open mind, and I need you to think about something that you probably never thought about before. I need your dad's heart," or
yeah,
whatever, you know what I mean? And to me, that, like, it gets no harder because 'cause you're bargaining with people while they're experiencing the stages of grief, and that to me is, like, very
right.
I'm glad I don't have to do it because I have to talk to people on scene, family members dying, and I sometimes a question as simple as like, "What hospital do you wanna go to?" is a process for that person to go
Yeah, it's
through.
like, I don't know.
Yeah.
They're like, "I need you to make the choice where I can't." Like,
Yes. And I couldn't imagine having that timeline, a very time sensitive, like, deadline where it's like, "Hey, I know you're suffering and grieving, but I need you to decide whether we can, do like a total harvest or whatever from this patient."
that's
And
where it comes in. Everybody has a different job. We have people whose role is just the hospital calls in a referral for somebody who's critically ill and could potentially decline to the point of being able to be a donor.
yeah,
And then we kind of follow in the background, see how that plan of care goes. Hopefully they improve, but if they don't, then we have a discussion with the doctor like, hey, you've given them the grave prognosis of their loved one's not going to get better or their loved one's brain dead. At this point, we'd really like to come in and speak with family and give them the option of giving someone else the gift of an organ.
yeah,
So we have a specialized team that's sole job is speaking with families um, about, this is what the process looks like. We're here to support you. And, you know, you don't have to do donation. This is an option. We want you to know that this is something you can do.
yeah,
It's not something we force upon people. It's not something we guilt you into. It's I want you to know these are your options. And there's even after the donation process starts, we're with you the whole step of the way. Um, And then once the donation is complete, even for the next year, monthly, you're hearing from us. We're reaching out to you. We're sending you things. We record heart tones and put them into Build-A-Bears
really,
of every single donor, and it's gifted to the family. We help you set up if you want to meet that recipient, and the recipient also wants to meet the donor family. We facilitate that for families to meet. We have donor ceremonies throughout the year. We do different family events. It's never just, hey, thanks for the organs, bye.
yeah,
I think that's what a lot of people think it is, but we're actually really involved with these families and we genuinely care about them. We don't want you to be in this position, but there's nothing we can do about it at that point. So we just want to be able to share the gift of donation.
yeah. Do you have like different levels of support you offer these people for like grieving and decision making and anything like that?
Yes. A lot of our family services have background in like pastoral care or some sort of patient advocacy or something in that event. So they're side by side with the families through the whole process, checking in, calling. When it comes to going to the OR, they're with families all day. They're standing by your side if you get to go to the OR. Um, as the patient passes, family services is there with you. They're holding your hand, they're comforting you. We give information on like grief counseling and how to deal with things. And so there's different levels of how that goes.
Yeah. Do you think that your job previously as like a flight medic or being a paramedic on the ground has helped you in this position make decisions or deal with families or deal with
Especially
hospitals?
um, dealing with families, yes, because on my side of things, obviously, I've had to tell people, "Hey, your loved one's passed. There's nothing we can do," or "They're critically ill, and this is really bad. We need to get them to the hospital. This is what you're looking at." It's definitely helps with your communication with hospital staff, especially with doctors and things. I've noticed that people who don't come from the paramedic background tend to be really timid
Yeah.
around physicians and not really able to just approach them like a person to person.
Yeah. Like a
They
peer.
Yeah, like their peer. They're
Yeah.
just another human being. Yes, they have a higher licensure or they went to medical school. They're still a person. You can talk on the same level. You don't have to be scared of them.
No.
They can, be grouchy and rude and they have a lot going on and they're taking care, of a dozen patients at a time. So being
Yes.
respectful of their time really helps, but they're they're just another human,
Yes.
even when they forget it.
Yes. What is your biggest pet peeve or grievance when it comes to, like, doing your job and interacting with, especially, like, nursing staff or hospital administration or anything like that? What is one thing, like, one message you would push out into the world?
I think the misunderstanding and the frustration that comes from them, a lot of people seem to have a disdain for us, and I really think it's just not understanding what we do and them feeling like, um, we're hovering or being pushy or that we're just vultures
Yeah,
and that we're not going to care about the family or support the family, or we want someone to pass so we can retrieve organs and things like that, and that's completely the opposite. We're all have either been respiratory therapists, paramedics, EMT, nurses, so we've all been in the space of taking care of people and wanting them to get better.
the lifesavers.
Yeah, and this is just a different version of patient and family advocacy,
Yeah,
and if someone's a registered donor, honoring their wishes and making sure it's fulfilled and still caring about these people, it's just in a different way
yeah,
than the way they see it.
yeah. What would you say, I see a lot on social media all the time, maybe it's just my feed or algorithm, but these videos about, my cousin or my brother, whoever was, being looked at for a potential organ donor, and then they woke up on the table, or there's always this miraculous story about how the patient just, ended up making a dramatic turnaround last minute. Surgeon has the scalpel in hand, and all these people wanna do is take our organs, and how do you feel when you see that stuff in the media?
I think a lot of it is misinformation or lack of education.
Yeah,
Um, I think even us, until you really get into the field, you don't really understand how that works. There is a process. You can either be a registered organ donor, which is first person authorization, which is where you made the decision whether you registered online or you put the little heart on your driver's license. I think a lot of people become concerned with their driver's license because they think that when they get to the hospital is going to do less because they want their organs.
yes,
The hospital has no idea you're registered.
no,
They don't look up your registry. They don't look at your license to find out if you're registered.
no,
They look at it to identify you. The
sometimes.
hospital has nothing to do with the donation world.
Yeah,
There are completely separate entities and they have to be separate
yeah,
where they just call in. They say, hey, we have a critically ill patient that could potentially decline to the point of organ donation possibility. So we're the ones that look up whether you're registered or, and then we have no say in your care. We can't pull the plug on you. We can't make any sort of decisions. The hospital is still doing everything they can to save your life 100%. Nobody's going to do less because they want your organs.
yeah,
In the area we live in, we have a very large African American population, and there is a very large earned distrust in the system for people of color. And so I think there's always some concern of they didn't do enough for my family
yeah,
member because they want this.
yeah.
And that is sometimes barriers that we have to deal with. And I can always understand someone saying no because they don't feel like they were treated appropriately. They feel like they got lesser care than they should have. And that's extremely understandable.
Especially in hospitals in poor areas of the city that have less investment from their motherships or less specialties, or like, I mean, there is a fact that if you live in a poor part of town with worse reimbursement, like, your hospital is not gonna be as pretty as, like, the rich areas of town.
It's not. And those people being lower income or even just being a minority, statistically, you do get poorer care than someone
100%.
that's white or in a richer area. Like, there's always going to be, unfortunately, that problem to deal with. So you always have to be able to understand that
Yeah,
when you're approaching families and speaking with them and asking them for something when they're experiencing the worst day of their life.
yeah.
Because you essentially are coming in and asking something from someone whose loved one is dying or has died. And that's a precarious situation, and you always have to be super mindful of that.
I feel like especially, again, in those, like, rougher areas of town or whatever, a lot of times that person had their life potentially taken by somebody else,
Mhm.
or you're the mother or the father, and you had some random person, like, take your kid's life from you, and now you have somebody else asking for something else
Yeah.
in addition, and it's like these people have already taken.
They just want and want and want, and
Yes,
yeah.
you know what I mean? And I can see where that comes from, especially, like, when you, like, it's obvious from the door the type of hospital you're in and what part of town you're in.
Yeah,
And to me, like, I've worked at a majority of the hospitals in our service area, and the remarkable difference from one part of town to the next to me is, like, it's honestly sad,
even in the
and
same city.
in the same city. And the part of town that is the poorest, that they need the most support, they need more blood, they need more, trauma capability, but they're not ever gonna get it.
No.
And the part of the town that has no shootings has the most capabilities to save a life, and they don't need it.
Yeah,
These people eat better, they exercise, they ride their bikes, they're doing all these things, like, they don't need the cath lab as bad as this part of the town does.
absolutely.
So, when you have a patient that is a organ donor candidate, how do they rule out, brain death, or how do they determine that the patient is, like, truly clinically not going to recover?
We can start with, the not brain death pathway. Um, it depends on the week which one's more common,
Yeah,
especially if are you dealing with a trauma center where, severe head injuries are more common, things like that. But with not being brain dead, how it works is essentially the hospital has done everything they can do. Um, the patient's not gonna recover, or family knows that they don't want to be vent dependent, they don't wanna be dependent on machines and wires, um, not mobile, not active, living in a nursing home. They know that's not what they want.
yeah,
So then they talk, with the family about, the next steps are you get a trach and peg, and they're dependent on all these things, or, you could passionately make them comfortable, and then you withdraw care. Once family decides one or the other, if they wanna go the withdrawal of care route, that's when we come in and we discuss with them, either your loved one is a registered donor and this is what they want and these are the next steps, or do you think this is something that your loved one would want to do, give their organs, the gift of life to someone else?
yeah,
Once that's decided, it begins the process of us coming in and assessing whether that patient still has potential because these patients are extremely sick and sometimes they're too sick for too long or too acutely that unfortunately they don't have potential to donate because their organs have begun to shut down or severe infections or things like that. Once we go through the process of assessing and making sure that um, at least one organ is viable for donation, we start running labs, different tests for different organs in the body to put out offers to other centers that for I think everybody's kind of heard of the UNOS list from Grey's Anatomy. That's real. That's a list. We start sending out offers to these facilities, um, find the best match, and then organize those centers coming in for recovery, get the OR scheduled, get all the teams in. Then the family is given the option to do a walk of honor, which is where everyone kind of lines the hallways, pays respect for the patient's life, and the gift that that patient has and the family has chosen to give into someone else. In non-brain dead patients, they are not legally dead. So most of the time, at least 2 family members get to come into the OR, and, sit with that patient as they pass. The way that process looks is once everyone's in there and settled, the patient's extubated, and they're usually given a time limit between 60 and 90 minutes to pass. Um, and the family gets to sit there the whole time. We usually kind of set it up and move the drapes around where they're able to hold their hand and see their face. And everybody's just kind of silent to give the family that time and that grace to be with their family member. Um, if they pass within a lot of time, that's when time of death is called. The family's escorted out, and then we'll proceed with surgery. Sometimes they have to be obviously reintubated if you're recovering heart,
yeah,
lungs, things like that. If you're not doing heart or lungs, they do not have to be reintubated, and just the recovery starts then. Um, and then once everybody's done, everything's cleaned up like normal. The patient normally goes to the morgue, and then from there, it's either the funeral home or if the tissue team comes in and recovers certain tissues, and then the family um, whatever funeral home they choose, the patient's transported there.
yeah,
It's a little different with our brain dead patients because once you are declared brain dead, that is your legal time of death. That can look different depending on the facility and depending on the states. Some places will do just bedside brain death testing, or they will take them to nuke med and see if there's any brain flow going around in there. And if there's not, then you're declared brain dead. With those patients, we don't have to go through the whole process of extubation, waiting for the heart to stop. So normally, family's not in there for that because they can just go straight into
Yeah,
surgery because they are legally dead.
that's nice.
That generally is a little bit simpler of a process, but I think for some families, going the cardiac death pathway can be a little more therapeutic with them because they're able to be there with their family
Yeah,
member. Because for normal people, you still see your loved one, they're there, they're breathing, they have vitals on the monitor, so it's hard to get that disconnect to where they're dead. They're not there
yeah.
anymore just because they're brain dead, and I think that gives them a little bit more finality and peace to it.
Instead of they're just gonna wheel grandpa or mom or whoever out of the room and they're not coming back.
Yeah, but it's like they were breathing,
Yeah.
so it is weird.
How do you determine brain death, and then, like, what is the process for, like, start to finish with the organ donation?
We don't determine brain death, but we do have our own criteria that
Yeah,
needs to be met to do that. Um, it generally needs to be 2 separate physicians signing off. If they do bedside brain death testing, that involves, a breathing trial, see whether you're breathing over the vent on your own or not, because if you're brain dead, those reflexes aren't there anymore.
yeah,
They'll check, for cough and gag, corneal reflexes, any sort of movement to stimulus, anything like that, um, and all that has to be done with relatively acceptable labs and things like that, so no severe metabolic derangements that could cause very similar symptoms to someone that was brain dead.
yeah,
So all that has to be within normal limits to an extent. And then that has to be done at 2 separate occasions by 2 different physicians. Um, I think that nuke med flow is probably the most preferred because it's very definite,
yeah,
to go in there and see that there's absolutely no flow going anywhere, so you know that that patient's brain dead. But it's not required. It is acceptable to do bedside brain death testing, signed
yeah,
off by 2 different physicians. It is different whether it has to be done whether those 2 tests have to be done within 12 hours of each other or 24.
yeah,
Um, like our pediatric hospital in the area, it has to be done 24 hours apart.
really,
So it just depends kind of on the facility and what their protocol is, and then also kinda has to line up with what we require.
yeah,
Because if you've got 2 brain dust testing, but they have a sodium that's 120 or 160,
yeah,
like, we need you to correct that,
yeah,
like, and then run it back,
yeah,
and then we'll talk.
yeah. I don't know. I'm glad that they have those checks and balances. 'Cause I've seen drugs like baclofen that, like, mimic brain death and
Right.
other conditions, obviously, that we've seen where these people do have turnarounds, but it's like, did we do our homework? And it's nice to know that, like, the organ donation center is gonna, like, check all those things and make sure that when people think that they're the enemy, they're actually the ones that's, like, holding the hospital accountable before they proceed any further.
Yeah, we are, very regulated. We have our inspections like everybody else. We are, I guess you would say, credentialed through Medicare
Yeah.
or Medicaid, Medicare, Medicaid. So it's a very make sure I's are dotted, T's are crossed, everything
Yes.
needs to be in order because it's a very serious process.
Yeah. Alright. That's all I've got. I think we're probably running out of time. Thanks for coming out again. I really appreciate it. I'm glad that we can kind of share what the organ donation process looks like. Hopefully, we'll have you around again sometime to talk about some other things. But for everybody else, thanks for watching. Be sure to check us out on all of our platforms. Check out our link tree. We're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. We have plenty more to come. We got some merch available also on Bandcamp. Thank you guys for hanging out. We'll see you around.